Upon her rebirth, the first thing Angelica did was dial her lawyer's number. Attorney Lee, I've decided on my father's estate distribution. Aside from the portion allocated to charity, the rest will be distributed exactly as my father intended. Not a single penny will go to Rebecca. In her previous life, she had been soft-hearted and had given 10% of the family shares to that adopted daughter, Rebecca. She had thought Rebecca would be grateful, but instead, Rebecca resented her and gradually pushed her into a dead end, ultimately leading to her tragic demise. This time, she would never give Rebecca another chance. After settling the inheritance matter, Angelica thought carefully before making another call. Leonardo. It's me, Angelica. Her voice carried a barely perceptible hint of nervousness. I am willing to exchange 10% of the family's shares for a marriage alliance with you. On the other end, Leonardo Ku's deep voice responded with skepticism. Angelica, are you sure? I am Elias and Samuel's uncle. Angelica's heart trembled slightly. Elias and Samuel, these two names were once the most important in her life. Yet in her past life, they had betrayed her at a crucial moment. She took a deep breath and solidified her determination. Elias and Samuel are nothing but strangers to me now. Senor Ku, exchanging 10% of the family shares for a marriage alliance with you, it's a fair deal, isn't it? The call fell into silence. Angelica gripped her phone tightly, and as Leonardo's pause lengthened, her heart gradually sank. Just as she was about to give up, his voice finally came through. All right. Angelica's heart skipped a beat, then gradually steadied. She was finally at ease. As soon as she pushed open the door to her home, before she could react, a bucket of cold water was poured straight onto her head without warning. The icy droplets slid down her hair, soaking through her clothes. Elias walked over, his expression cold as he looked down at her. Angelica, do you realize your mistake? Angelica froze. She had no idea what she had done wrong. Was it simply because she hadn't rushed back to celebrate Rebecca's birthday? Behind Elias, Samuel strolled over lazily, his lips curved in a teasing smirk. What are you doing standing outside in the freezing cold? Come inside first. Angelica struggled to her feet and stepped inside. Rebecca sat on the sofa, holding an exquisitely decorated birthday cake, her delicate face radiating happiness. Angelica's gaze immediately fell upon the bracelet on Rebecca's wrist. She stepped forward, wanting to take a closer look. Before she could get near, Elias shoved her to the ground. Angelica, what do you think you're doing? Are you trying to bully Rebecca again? That bracelet was a gift from my mother. Why is it on her wrist? Rebecca's eyes instantly filled with tears, as though Angelica had gravely wronged her. I'm sorry, sister. I didn't know this was from your mother. I just thought it was beautiful. And Elias made the decision to give it to me. Angelica let out a cold laugh. You're just an adopted daughter in this family. My mother is not your mother. And that bracelet was a gift from my mother to me. What right does Elias have to give it to you? Elias's face darkened instantly. He held the crying Rebecca in his arms and snapped at Angelica. You're about to turn 20 to inherit your father's estate. You have to choose someone for a marriage alliance. Haven't you been deciding between Samuel and me? So what if I gave Rebecca a little bracelet? He paused, his tone carrying impatience. It's just a bracelet. If Rebecca likes it, why can't we give it to her? We've told you so many times, we don't like you, and we hate being restricted, especially by an arranged marriage. But since we're part of the 4 great families, we can't refuse it. So, make your choice. Who do you want? Angelica looked at them, feeling an overwhelming surge of disgust. A sneer formed on her lips, and her voice carried a trace of mockery. Between the two of you? I choose neither. Elias frowned, his face full of impatience. You're playing hard to get again? Your father already said you can only choose from the heirs of the other 3 great families. Besides us two, who else can you pick? Samuel let out a mocking sneer, his tone full of disdain. Angelica, whatever game you're playing, it won't work. Don't think you can use these tricks to make us change our opinion of you. Angelica took a deep breath and raised her head, her gaze unwavering as she met their eyes. Who said I have to choose between the two of you? I want to marry. Before she could finish her sentence, a sudden wail interrupted her. Rebecca, hands trembling, removed the bracelet from her wrist. Tears fell like broken pearls, sliding down her cheeks as she choked out her words. I'm sorry, Elias. Samuel, I didn't know you two were supposed to marry Angelica. I wish you a lifetime of happiness together. With that, her face drenched in tears, Rebecca turned and ran out the door, vanishing into the night. Elias's face turned dark with rage. He shoved Angelica aside and strode after Rebecca, leaving behind an icy warning. If anything happens to Rebecca tonight, you'll be the one to blame. Samuel, still smirking, picked up the discarded bracelet and held it up in front of Angelica. You want it? Before Angelica could respond, he violently flung the bracelet at her face. The sharp metal grazed her cheek, leaving a thin trail of crimson. Someone like you isn't even worthy of this. Samuel's voice was laced with venom. Angelica, I'm warning you, don't play games with me. Otherwise, I'll make sure you die a miserable death. With those words, he casually tossed the bracelet aside and walked away without a second glance. As Angelica watched their retreating figures, Samuel's cold words triggered a flood of dark and painful memories from her past life. She had grown up alongside Elias and Samuel. They were like knights, always protecting her. No matter the weather, they would pick her up from school without fail, never allowing any unfamiliar boy to get close to her. After Angelica's father passed away, they even bought a large villa to live with her, ensuring she was taken care of. Back then, they treated her like the most precious thing in their lives. But everything changed when Angelica turned 18. That year, she received her father's will to inherit her family's wealth. She had to marry into one of the other 3 great families by the age of 20. Additionally, the will stated that Angelica's father-sponsored foster daughter, Rebecca, would start living with Angelica at 18 to take care of her. The moment Rebecca arrived, their attitudes toward Angelica gradually changed. As her 20th birthday approached, Rebecca suddenly insisted on taking Angelica and Elias on a hot air balloon ride. Mid-flight, the balloon began to leak. In that life-or-death moment, Elias grabbed the only functional parachute and without hesitation, he chose Rebecca. Tears streaming down her face, Angelica begged Elias, I don't know how to use a parachute. Can you take me with you? Elias looked at her coldly and scolded. Now is not the time to throw a tantrum. Rebecca is afraid of heights. I need to take her down first. If you really can't handle it, I'll send a rescue team for you. Without a second thought, he pried Angelica's fingers off his arm, leaped off the balloon with Rebecca in tow, and didn't even glance back. Angelica turned to the only remaining parachute, only to find a massive hole in it. Beside it lay a note, its message dripping with mockery. The handwriting was unmistakably Rebecca's. Angelica, you only left me 10% of the inheritance, and you still want to take Elias and Samuel for yourself? If that's the case, then die here today. Everything you have, I will take it all. Angelica's heart plummeted into an abyss. Desperately, she called for emergency rescue, over and over again. Finally, relief washed over her when she learned that help was on the way. But to her shock, the one who arrived wasn't a rescue team, it was Samuel. He looked at her with a deep frown. Why is it you? Where's Rebecca? Angelica, in a panic, pleaded with him. I'll do anything you want, just save me. Samuel hesitated, as if wavering between choices. Just then, his phone rang. What? Rebecca is in danger? I'll be there right away. The hot air balloon was rapidly drifting toward a cliff's edge. With no other choice, Angelica took a leap of faith, literally. However, fate never gave her a chance. She was ultimately shattered into pieces, her body never to be found. Perhaps because there was too much unwillingness in her heart, Angelica's soul never truly dispersed. She watched, powerless, as Rebecca took everything her father had left for her. She watched as Rebecca and Elias got married and lived happily ever after. Only 2 people truly cared about her disappearance. One was her grandfather, the other was Leonardo. Angelica pushed aside the dark memories of her past life. Suddenly, the screen of her phone lit up with a message from Leonardo. Angie, I'm currently on a business trip abroad. I'll be back in a few days. My butler will contact you soon. Next month, on the 7th, is an auspicious day for marriage, coincidentally. It's also your 20th birthday. How do you feel about that date? I bought a small island for you as a wedding gift. If there's anything else you want, Just let me know. Angelica stared at the messages, feeling an unexpected warmth in her heart. Without hesitation, she agreed to Leonardo's proposal, and once again, her perception of his wealth reached new heights. For a brief moment, she didn't even correct the intimate nickname Angie. Meanwhile, on the other side of the screen, Leonardo held his phone with a silly smile on his face, looking nothing like the formidable Seigneur Coup who dominated the business world. Just then, a message from Rebecca popped up. Out of habit, Angelica tapped on it. Hey, could you help me like my post for a social media contest? The message had been sent just 2 minutes ago, right at the edge of the time window to retract it. Sure enough, Rebecca quickly unsent the message and then followed up with another. Oops, sorry. Angelica, I sent that by mistake. Please don't be mad at me. Angelica raised an eyebrow and sneered inwardly. She opened Rebecca's social media profile to see what she had posted. The moment the images loaded, a perfectly curated 9-photo collage filled her screen. The pictures were filled with lavish gifts, exquisite luxury items given to Rebecca by Elias and Samuel. But the centerpiece of it all was an enormous pink diamond. The gemstones sparkled brilliantly, taking the spotlight. It was the same pink diamond Elias had won at a high-stakes auction last month. Back then, Angelica had naively thought it was meant for her 20th birthday. She had even been debating what gift to give in return. Yet now, looking at the truth laid out in front of her, she realized how foolish she had been. Angelica knew exactly what Rebecca was trying to do. She was deliberately provoking her, trying to stir up jealousy and anger. The old Angelica might have fallen for it. She would have been enraged by Rebecca's manipulative, pretentious coquette act. She would have been heartbroken watching Elias and Samuel give away what should have been hers. But this time, she casually gave Rebecca's post a like. And then, without another thought, she put her phone aside and got ready for bed. The next morning, Angelica woke up naturally, well-rested. For the first time in a long while, the sun was already high in the sky. As expected, Elias and Samuel hadn't come home, but she couldn't care less. She received a message from the butler, asking her preferences for the island's design. It would be completely decorated according to her taste. The butler also asked her to choose a name for the island. Angelica thought for a moment before settling on a name, Angie y Leo. It was a combination of her and Leonardo's names, symbolizing a beautiful future together. She had no idea just how much this simple gesture would stir Leonardo's heart. Since Leonardo had given her such an extravagant gift, Angelica decided to pick out something special for him in return. The wedding was set for the 7th of next month, 1 month away. That gave her plenty of time to find the perfect gift. Wasting no time, Angelica headed straight to the largest shopping mall in the city. But to her surprise, she ran into Elias, Samuel, and Rebecca. The moment Elias saw her, his expression darkened with displeasure. His voice carried clear irritation. Angelica, I can't believe how shameless you are. Are you seriously following us? Angelica let out a laugh in sheer disbelief. Elias's shamelessness had truly reached new heights. She didn't even bother to acknowledge them and attempted to walk past them, uninterested. But just as she was about to leave, Rebecca suddenly reached out and grabbed her arm, holding on tightly. Angelica, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I was feeling down yesterday, so Elias and Samuel wanted to take me shopping to cheer me up. Please don't blame them, if anyone is to blame. It should be me. Samuel immediately pulled Rebecca into his arms, his usual carefree expression replaced with an unusual seriousness. Rebecca, you don't need to apologize to her. You did nothing wrong. You're not like her. Elias also reached out, gently patting Rebecca's head with an indulgent smile. His voice was filled with protectiveness. Exactly, Rebecca. You did nothing wrong. We can be good to whoever we want. Angelica has no right to interfere. Angelica watched their pretentious display and couldn't help but sneer inwardly. She had no interest in watching their theatrical performance any longer. Just as she was about to step around them and leave, Rebecca suddenly dropped to her knees in front of her. Angelica, I'm so grateful that Angelica's father sponsored me. Your family has been so kind to me, but Elias and Samuel don't like you. Can you give them their freedom? For my sake? No matter what you want from me, I will do it. Rebecca knelt on the ground, her voice trembling, as if she were the one suffering injustice. Angelica was so amused by the absurdity of the act that she actually laughed out loud. This level of performance was downright embarrassing to watch. Elias quickly helped Rebecca up, then turned to Angelica with a reprimanding look. How can you be so unreasonable? You're not even 1/10 as considerate as Rebecca. Samuel, on the other hand, took a more direct approach. He strode forward and violently shoved Angelica to the ground. His strength was overwhelming, leaving her no chance to resist. Pain shot through her shoulders as he pressed her down, his grip so tight it felt as though her bones were about to shatter. Looking down at Angelica, Samuel smirked, but the amusement never reached his eyes. Wrong. You're not even 1/10,000th as good as Rebecca. Right now, kneeling on the ground, you're no different from a beggar. Angelica struggled to get up, her body aching all over. As she lifted her gaze, she saw Elias and Samuel surrounding Rebecca with concern, completely ignoring her. Then, she did something unexpected. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, she took Rebecca's hand and placed it into Elias's and Samuel's hands, one on each side. The three of them stood together, forming a harmonious picture, with the demeanor of a benevolent elder. Angelica smiled gracefully. Rebecca, since you love Elias and Samuel so much, as your sister, I shall fulfill your wish. I hope you three will be happy forever. Elias's face turned grim in an instant. Frowning, he stared at Angelica with confusion. Angelica, what kind of trick are you playing now? Samuel scoffed, his tone dripping with disdain. Trying to get our attention again? You're ridiculous. Without us, who else would you marry? Angelica looked at them calmly, her expression devoid of any emotion. Forgot to inform you, my wedding is on the 7th of next month. Samuel's face darkened immediately. He let out a contemptuous laugh. Do you really think this scheme of yours will work? We don't like you. No matter what game you play, you better give up now. Just as Angelica was about to reply, a familiar figure hurried over. Her butler, the butler, his expression filled with concern, approached Angelica and slightly bowed before speaking. Miss, why did you come all the way to the mall yourself? If you wanted anything, you could have just told me. The entire mall belongs to the Gu family. There was no need for you to come in person. Elias and Samuel exchanged confused glances. Before they could question Angelica about what she was up to, Rebecca tugged on their hands, her voice gentle as she reassured them. Angelica probably just didn't want to feel inferior in front of you, so she hired an actor to put on a show. Girls can be sensitive, it's best not to expose her. Elias nodded approvingly. Fine, for Rebecca's sake, we'll let this slide. Samuel still had doubts, but Rebecca's sweet words and soft expression convinced him to drop the matter, for now. He frowned slightly but didn't press further. Angelica, meanwhile, was too focused on picking out a gift to pay attention to their conversation. After much thought, she decided to design a custom piece of jewelry herself. Something unique, one of a kind. Leonardo would probably like that. Feeling satisfied with her choice, her mood lightened. She casually picked out a few men's outfits and a watch before instructing Butler Lou to take her home. Before leaving, Butler Lou handed Angelica a set of keys. Speaking softly, Miss, these properties have all been transferred to your name by Seigneur Ku. You may live in whichever one you prefer. Seigneur Ku only wants you to be happy. Hearing this, something stirred inside Angelica. She realized it was time to leave. After all, this house was now occupied by the three people she despised the most. Back home, Angelica didn't pack much. 2 suitcases were enough to hold everything she needed. While sorting through her belongings, she unexpectedly stumbled upon a stack of thick photo albums. She gently wiped away the dust and opened the first one. The pictures instantly pulled her back into the past. She turned the pages slowly, each image a vivid reminder of a time long gone. She saw her younger self, nestled between Elias and Samuel, their faces lit up with bright, carefree smiles. She saw them playing by the seaside, waves splashing up and soaking their clothes. She saw herself hiding behind Samuel, making a mischievous face at the camera. Back then, those moments had meant everything to her. Now, they meant nothing. Angelica took a deep breath, closed the album, and her gaze hardened with determination. She picked up a lighter and, one by one, set the photographs on fire. The flames flickered and danced, greedily devouring the images, reducing them to ash. She did not hesitate. She did not feel sorrow. She merely stood there, watching as the fire erased the past. Elias and Samuel had just returned home when they saw the flames consuming the photographs. Elias's face paled instantly. He strode toward Angelica, his voice carrying an almost imperceptible tremor. "Angelica, what are you doing?" His first instinct was to snatch the remaining photos from her hands, but before he could, Angelica let out a soft, knowing smile. With a flick of her wrist, she tossed the rest of the pictures into the fire. The flames roared to life, spreading rapidly, swallowing any chance of retrieval. Samuel, unwilling to accept it, reached out, trying to salvage the half-burned pictures, but the searing heat licked at his skin the moment he touched them. He pulled back with a sharp intake of breath, his hand instantly red and swollen. Clenching his jaw, he looked at Angelica with frustration. "Even if you don't want them anymore, did you really have to burn them? These were our memories." Angelica found his words laughable. She suddenly wondered, what would their reaction be when they learned that her fiancé wasn't Elias or Samuel? Had they ever truly considered the possibility that she would leave them behind? That she would start a new life without them? Looking at the two men, their expressions filled with unease, Angelica's gaze turned ice cold. "They're just pictures. As long as I'm alive, I can take new ones anytime." Elias froze for a moment. Then, as if trying to ease the tension, he spoke lightly. "We haven't taken many photos with Rebecca yet. Next time, let's take some together." Angelica let out a quiet, self-mocking laugh. She didn't say another word. As Elias and Samuel stepped into the house, their eyes immediately landed on the two large suitcases sitting in the middle of the living room. Elias's expression darkened. "Where are you going?" "Grandfather misses me. I'm going to stay with him for a while." The lie slipped effortlessly from Angelica's lips. Lately, her behavior had been unusual. For some reason, Elias and Samuel felt a strange, growing sense of unease. Elias hesitated for a moment before pulling out an elegant gift box. Inside was a luxurious designer scarf. Samuel, on the other hand, took out a car key. "These are for you. We may have gone too far yesterday." This was their unspoken way of making amends. Every time they argued because of Rebecca, Elias and Samuel would send Angelica gifts. And every time, Angelica would eventually give in. It had become a silent, cyclical pattern, one where she was always the one compromising. 2 days ago, Rebecca had flaunted her new designer handbag on Instagram, a bag that required an extensive bundle purchase to obtain, and the scarf in Angelica's hands? It was nothing more than an accessory, merely a requirement to secure Rebecca's luxury handbag. A meaningless afterthought. Angelica's fingers tightened around the scarf, her lips curled into a cold smile. The car key in Samuel's hand belonged to a custom-made sports car originally intended for Rebecca's birthday. The car had even been painted with the name Angelica. But because Rebecca disliked flashy colors, Samuel had ordered a new one in her preferred shade. Now, what Rebecca didn't want was given to Angelica. Angelica glanced at the gifts in their hands and let out a self-deprecating laugh. "I don't need something someone else has already rejected." Elias frowned, looking puzzled. "Angelica, what's wrong? Are you still mad?" Seeing that Angelica refused to accept the gift, Samuel's expression darkened, his voice laced with irritation. "Angelica, can you stop acting like a spoiled child? We already apologized. What else do you want? You're the only one here who refuses to be reasonable." In a sudden burst of frustration, Samuel threw the car key at her. Hard, the metal struck her forehead, leaving a sharp sting as blood slowly seeped from the wound. Angelica let out a muffled groan, her eyes welling up with involuntary tears from the pain. A flicker of panic flashed across Elias's face. He quickly reached out to steady her unsteady figure. "Samuel probably didn't expect you wouldn't dodge. Come on, I'll take you to the hospital." Angelica didn't make a fuss over the pain. Without another word, she followed Elias to the car. Samuel remained silent and trailed behind them. It had been a long time since Angelica last sat in the passenger seat of Elias's car. But the moment she stepped inside, she was greeted with an overwhelming sight, an explosion of pastel pink decor. A custom-made plaque hung from the dashboard, boldly stating, Princesa Rebe's exclusive throne. Around it, colorful cartoon stickers were scattered in every direction, creating an almost childish display. The seat was cluttered with various snacks, drinks, and cosmetics, giving the car a messy yet personalized look. Among the items, one familiar lipstick caught Angelica's attention. She paused, momentarily stunned. Not long ago, she had attended a banquet. Since her own car was being serviced, she had borrowed Elias's for the night. Unknowingly, she had left her lipstick inside. The next day, Rebecca had thrown a fit upon discovering it. And Elias? He had exploded in anger. How could you leave your lipstick in my car? Are you stupid? At the time, Angelica had no choice but to apologize tearfully, carefully explaining that it had been an accident. Looking back now, it was clear those who were favored could do whatever they wanted, without consequences. Angelica's gaze lingered on the stickers in silence. Noticing her reaction, Elias's expression shifted slightly. Rebecca just stuck them on for fun. She's childish like that. She enjoys cute little things. Angelica smiled faintly, her tone eerily calm. Indeed, very cute. Elias was momentarily taken aback. You're not mad? If this had been before, Angelica would have cried, argued, and demanded that all of Rebecca's things be removed from the car. She might have even had a full-blown fight with them over something as trivial as this. But now, she didn't even care about Elias or Samuel. Why would she care about a few meaningless decorations? Why would I be mad? Let's just get to the hospital. I still have things to do afterward. Hearing Angelica's indifferent tone, Elias withdrew his questioning gaze. A gut feeling told him something about Angelica had changed. Something irreversible. It was as if she truly didn't care about them anymore. The car sped through the dimly lit streets. Behind them, Samuel's bright red sports car trailed closely. Just as they were about to reach the hospital, only one street away, Samuel suddenly made a sharp U-turn. The screech of tires echoed through the night, and his car disappeared into the opposite direction. Almost immediately, Elias's phone buzzed, lighting up with an incoming call. On the screen, the caller ID glowed brightly. Princesa Rebe. Angelica hadn't even had time to look away when Elias's voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. Who told you to look at my phone? We're not even married yet. And you think you can control me? Let me warn you. Angelica, give up that idea. Angelica opened her mouth, wanting to explain, but Elias didn't give her the chance. He shot her a frosty glare before answering the call. And the moment he did, his voice softened instantly. Elias, brother. From the other end of the phone, Rebecca's voice trembled with sobs. Elias immediately tensed up. Rebecca, what happened? Don't cry. Just tell me. Rebecca's voice was soft and frail. The power went out at home. I'm scared of the dark, Elias. Can you come keep me company? At that moment, Angelica accidentally kicked the clutter on the passenger seat. The sharp pain made her let out a muffled groan. Hearing this, Rebecca's crying became even more pitiful. I'm sorry. It's my fault. I forgot you're supposed to marry Angelica. I shouldn't have disturbed you. With that, she hung up abruptly. Elias's face darkened instantly. He turned to glare at Angelica, his eyes burning with anger. Why are you making noises for no reason? If anything happens to Rebecca, you'll pay for it. Without another word, he slammed on the gas, speeding toward Rebecca's apartment. Drop me off by the roadside. I'll go to the hospital myself. Angelica's head throbbed violently. She just wanted to get her wound treated as soon as possible. But instead of stopping, Elias suddenly slammed on the brakes. The sudden force threw Angelica forward, and her forehead crashed into the windshield. A sharp pain shot through her skull. The reopened wound bled profusely, the warm liquid trickling down her face. Dizziness washed over her, but Elias didn't seem to notice her discomfort. Instead, he shouted at her in frustration. Are you seriously jealous right now? Did you not hear Rebecca just now? She's scared. When did you become so heartless? Ignoring her pale face, he continued speeding toward Rebecca's home. As soon as they arrived, Elias grabbed a bag of snacks and hurriedly got out of the car. I'll just drop these off for Rebecca. I'll be back soon. He didn't wait for Angelica's response before locking the car and rushing upstairs. Time ticked by. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Elias never came back. Angelica's vision blurred from blood loss. She tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. She tried again. Still no answer. Then, without warning, she was blocked. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the rejection message. Her phone battery was critically low. Despair set in, summoning the last of her strength. She reached for the emergency hammer and smashed it against the window. Glass shattered, sharp fragments cutting into her hands, but she barely registered the pain. Dragging herself out of the car, she collapsed onto the pavement. A kind passerby rushed to help and called an ambulance. At the hospital, the doctors stitched her forehead. 5 stitches. As the anesthesia wore off, waves of pain crashed over her, nearly unbearable. Lying on the stark white hospital bed, she stared at the ceiling, feeling the exhaustion consume her. Just as she was about to close her eyes, a familiar ringtone broke the silence. Samuel, her custom ringtone for him. She had personally chosen it back then. Elias and Samuel had complained about how childish it was, yet neither had ever changed it. But after Rebecca arrived, that ringtone had never rung again. The sound was insistent, refusing to stop. Finally, she mustered enough strength to answer. The first words she heard were a scolding. "Where the hell have you been? Why didn't you answer?" Angelica let out a breathless laugh. Just moments ago, when she was barely clinging to life, she had called Elias again and again, and he hadn't answered even once. "I didn't feel like picking up." The other end of the line fell silent for a moment. Then, Samuel spoke again, his tone as entitled as ever. "Rebecca's stomach is hurting. Go buy her something warm and bring it up to her now." Samuel's entitled attitude ignited a fire of irritation in Angelica. She couldn't help but sneer. "Do you 3 need me to buy you some condoms as well? I'll bring them to you together." Angelica, what the hell do you mean by that? Are you seriously jealous again? Can you stop being so unreasonable? Angelica was exhausted. She had no interest in arguing anymore. "I'm in the hospital." With that, she hung up and immediately powered off her phone. Due to her concussion, Angelica slept at the hospital for the night. The next morning, a nurse woke her up for a checkup. After charging her phone, she turned it back on and saw multiple missed calls and messages, all from Leonardo. The latest message read, "I'll be landing in 2 hours. I'll pick you up from the hospital." A warmth spread through Angelica's heart. She replied, "Okay, I'll wait for you." Then, she obediently let the nurse wheel her off for examination. As she waited for her tests, she unexpectedly ran into Elias. He was carrying Rebecca in his arms, his expression impatient as he snapped at her. "Are you following me?" Before Angelica could reply, Rebecca quickly spoke up, her voice soft and apologetic. "Angelica, it's my fault. I got lost on the way to the hospital. So Elias and Samuel came with me. Please don't blame them." She looked as if she was trying to take the blame, but her tone carried a subtle plea for sympathy. Angelica hadn't even opened her mouth before Samuel protectively pulled Rebecca behind him. "Rebecca, it's not your fault. She's the one making up lies. Yesterday, she wouldn't even buy something for you, claiming she was in the hospital. She's the one in the wrong." His gaze fell on Angelica's wheelchair. "Look at this, she even got herself a wheelchair just to trick us." Contempt dripped from his voice. Angelica responded coldly, her tone laced with ridicule. "Why would I blame you? Rebecca is sick, and you came to the hospital with her. Sounds normal to me. What does any of this have to do with me? And why would I waste my time following you?" Her indifference clearly infuriated Samuel. He lost his temper and shoved her forcefully. Angelica, already weak from her concussion, couldn't keep her balance. The wheelchair tipped over, and she crashed onto the cold hospital floor. Pain shot through her body, and she instinctively let out a groan. Rebecca gasped and immediately squatted down beside her, pretending to help while whispering, "Samuel, how could you push her?" Despite her words, there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Angelica, filled with disgust, pushed her away and tried to get up on her own. But before she could stand, Rebecca suddenly clutched her stomach and collapsed onto the floor, wailing, "My stomach, it hurts." Elias's face turned pale with panic. He quickly lifted Rebecca into his arms and turned on Angelica with a furious glare. If anything happens to Rebecca, you'll pay for it. Before he could say another word, a deep, commanding voice rang out, cold and regal, cutting through the tension like a blade. Elias. Who exactly are you threatening? Leonardo stepped forward, his presence exuding authority, dressed in a meticulously tailored suit, every line of fabric molded perfectly to his strong frame, accentuating his imposing figure. His expression was unreadable, his dark eyes carrying a natural air of dominance. With a single glance, the entire hospital lobby fell silent, dead silent. Elias's face paled in shock. His voice trembled in disbelief. Uncle Leo, what are you doing here? Leonardo ignored him. Instead, he bent down and gently lifted Angelica into his arms, cradling her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. His fingers brushed through her hair soothingly, his touch full of silent reassurance. Then, he looked at Elias, his voice steady and lethal. Elias, who exactly were you planning to punish? Your little aunt? The moment he spoke, his bodyguards moved in. Within seconds, Elias, Samuel, and Rebecca were forced to the ground. The two men struggled in disbelief. It felt as if the world was crumbling around them. What nonsense are you talking about? How could she be our aunt? Elias and Samuel stared at Leonardo in shock, unable to process what was happening before their eyes. But Leonardo had no intention of explaining anything to them. He simply cast them a cold glance and stated, "Don't forget to attend your little aunt's wedding on the 7th of next month." With that, he carried Angelica in his arms and walked away without another word. Elias clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white before slamming them against the ground with a muffled thud. Samuel's face remained unreadable, his expression dark and unreadable. Rebecca carefully approached them, reaching out to help them up. "Don't be upset, Elias. Samuel, who would have thought Angelica knew Senior Coup?" Elias snapped out of his daze at her words. A trace of confusion flashed through his eyes as he muttered, "Exactly. How does Angelica know Uncle Leo? When did they get so close?" Samuel let out a mocking chuckle, his tone filled with disdain. "It's just another one of her tricks to get our attention. Someone like Uncle Leo would never seriously consider a woman like Angelica. She must be doing this just to make us jealous." His voice dripped with contempt, as if the idea of Angelica and Leonardo being together was beyond ridiculous. Elias hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement, though his tone carried a hint of uncertainty. "Maybe you're right. She's never even mentioned Leonardo before. She could just be trying to provoke us." Seeing that Elias was beginning to accept his theory, Samuel smirked with satisfaction and added, "I can't wait to see how she embarrasses herself on the 7th. There's no way Leonardo would actually marry her. When the truth comes out, she won't even have the face to see us again." Meanwhile, Angelica had no idea what Elias and Samuel were saying outside the hospital. But even if she did, she wouldn't have cared. Right now, she was sitting in Leonardo's car, tense and uncertain. It was her first time being this close to him, and her heart was racing wildly. "Why did you suddenly come back? You didn't answer my calls or messages yesterday. I had Butler Lou investigate and found out you were in the hospital, so I rushed back." Angelica's fingers tightened slightly. "Are you leaving again?" I still have business to handle abroad. But don't worry, I'll definitely be back in time for our wedding. If anything happens, just tell Butler Lou. He'll take care of it." The car came to a slow stop. Leonardo turned to face her fully, his voice soft yet firm. "Angie." Angelica blinked, looking at him in confusion. Then, Leonardo suddenly leaned in, their breaths intertwined in the small space between them. A second later, a soft, fleeting kiss landed on her forehead. It was light, barely there, but it left a deep imprint. "Angie, wait for me." After sending her home, Leonardo left in a hurry, entrusting Butler Lou with the task of taking her to their new home. Butler Lou efficiently packed up her belongings. Angelica took one last look at the house she had lived in for 5 years, and then, without a hint of reluctance, she left. But just as she reached the entrance, Elias and Samuel appeared out of nowhere, blocking her path. "Uncle Leo is gone. Let's see how long you can keep up this act." "I have to admit, Angelica, You've got some skills, convincing Uncle Leo to play along with your little show." Elias's voice dripped with mockery. Samuel folded his arms, his gaze filled with scorn. "Uncle Leo's secretary Lou is still waiting outside. What did you do to charm him enough to make Uncle Leo step in for you?" Angelica had no intention of explaining anything to them. They wouldn't believe her anyway. But on the wedding day, they would know the truth. She turned to leave, but before she could take another step, Samuel grabbed her wrist tightly. "Angelica, this is your last chance. Go apologize to Rebecca right now. Or do you really want all of the city to laugh at you when your so-called wedding falls apart next month? Without the two of us, let's see who would actually marry you." Angelica nearly laughed out loud at their arrogance. She lifted her head, looking at Elias and Samuel with unwavering determination. For the first time, there was no hesitation in her voice, only absolute finality. "Elias, Samuel, from this moment on, I, Angelica, have nothing to do with either of you. We are strangers now. You don't need to worry about my wedding. I'm not marrying either of you. At most, you'll be attending as guests, assuming your uncle even bothers to invite you." With that, she turned and walked away, never sparing them another glance. In the days that followed, Angelica threw herself into wedding preparations, her heart feeling lighter than ever. Leonardo, despite his busy schedule, personally oversaw every detail, ensuring that Angelica didn't have to worry about a single thing. Everything was arranged to perfection, all for the sake of giving her the grandest wedding. Her only job was to try on dresses and be the most beautiful bride. On the wedding day, Elias and Samuel arrived with the Gu family's entourage to escort the bride. The moment they stepped into the venue, an uneasy feeling settled over them. Every decoration was meticulously planned, every arrangement exuding an air of elegance and grandeur. This was no hastily thrown-together event. Even before Leonardo had arrived, Elias and Samuel exchanged a wary glance. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crept into their minds. As they climbed the stairs, they were greeted with a sight that left them momentarily speechless. Angelica stood before them, draped in an ethereal white wedding gown. For a brief second, a trace of admiration flashed in their eyes. Almost instinctively, they both reached out a hand, but Angelica didn't take either. "You're only here for the bridal escort. There's no need to help me. Just wait outside." Her words sent a wave of tension through the air. Elias's face twisted with anger, his teeth grinding together. "Angelica, I swear, keep pretending all you want. The more extravagant this wedding is, the bigger the joke you'll become when it all falls apart." Samuel smirked, arms crossed. "You put all this effort into making the wedding grand just to force us to attend, didn't you? If you kneel and beg us now, maybe, just maybe, we'll humor you and play along." Angelica merely scoffed, her eyes filled with ridicule. "You'll find out soon enough." She turned away and followed her bridesmaids toward the wedding car, watching her leave without a second thought. Elias and Samuel's expressions darkened further. Her words echoed in their minds. "The groom isn't either of you." Elias and Samuel, along with a few of their friends, drove straight to the wedding venue. The sight that awaited them nearly knocked the breath from their lungs. It was like stepping into a dream. The venue had been transformed into a breathtaking garden of flowers, an exquisite display of color and elegance. Rare, freshly imported blooms filled the air with a soft fragrance. Every detail was flawless, exuding a level of sophistication that couldn't be faked. One of their friends shifted uneasily. "Elias, Samuel, this wedding looks real. If it were just for show, why go this far? What if Angelica really is marrying Senor Ku?" Elias and Samuel stiffened, their eyes darkening. A brief flicker of panic crossed their faces, but almost instantly, they suppressed it, forcing a sneer. Elias scoffed. "Impossible. We grew up with Angelica. We've never seen her have any connection with Uncle Leo. She can only marry within the three families. If not us, then who?" Samuel let out a cold chuckle. "She's done things like this before, this time. She just went bigger. I can't wait to see how she humiliates herself." Just as he finished speaking, a soft melody filled the air. The ceremony had begun. The officiant's voice echoed across the venue. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the bride." Angelica entered, walking gracefully with her grandfather, The hall fell into a stunned silence, bathed in golden light. She looked like a goddess, poised, beautiful, untouchable. As she walked past, she smiled at guests on either side, acknowledging them with warmth. But when her gaze passed over Elias and Samuel, she didn't stop. She didn't even blink. To her, they were nothing but air. The bride stood on stage, but the officiant hadn't announced the groom's entrance yet. Seconds ticked by, and an odd tension filled the air. Guests exchanged glances, murmuring among themselves, "Is the groom really Senor Ku? Could this be a lie? He's been a mystery for years, no woman has ever been by his side. I heard Angelica needs to marry into one of the 3 major families to claim her father's inheritance. What if the groom is someone else? She grew up with Elias and Samuel. Logically, she should have picked one of them." Hearing the whispers, Elias and Samuel relaxed. Their unease faded, replaced by smug confidence. They exchanged a glance and smirked, as if they had already won. Elias sneered, still putting on a show. "Angelica?" Samuel took a step forward, his voice loud and arrogant. "Angelica, if you kneel down and apologize to me right now, I'll consider doing you a favor and becoming your groom. Otherwise, get ready to be humiliated today." Angelica remained composed, utterly unfazed. Then, the sound of a violin filled the room. All eyes turned toward the entrance. Leonardo Ku stepped into the hall, a single flower pinned to his chest, his tailored suit crisp and immaculate, exuding a natural air of power and elegance. Elias and Samuel's smirks vanished. Their eyes widened in disbelief. They watched as Leonardo, the man they had always seen as untouchable, walked up the aisle, toward Angelica. Angelica's lips curved into a soft smile, happiness shimmering in her eyes. But no one cared about Elias and Samuel anymore. They had become irrelevant. Leonardo finished his piece and stepped onto the stage. He took Angelica's hand, his gaze filled with adoration. "Thank you all for coming to witness my wedding with Angelica." Thunderous applause erupted across the hall. Cheers, congratulations, and admiration filled the air. The officiant's voice rose above the clamor. "Today, 2 families unite, bound by love and destiny. May their marriage flourish like the peach blossoms in spring, their home filled with warmth and harmony, and their future blessed with happiness and prosperity." Then, the vows began. "Do you, Leonardo Ku, take Angelica as your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do you part?" Without hesitation, Leonardo's deep voice echoed across the hall. "I do. Do you, Angelica, take Leonardo Ku as your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do you part?" Angelica smiled. "I do." The guests erupted in applause, showering them with blessings. Everyone was celebrating. Everyone, except Elias and Samuel. "We object!" Elias suddenly roared, breaking free from the security's hold. Like a wounded beast, he stumbled toward the stage, desperation in his eyes. "Angelica, weren't you supposed to marry me? Isn't this whole thing just your way of forcing my hand?" "Fine, I accept." Gasps filled the room. All eyes turned to him. Time seemed to freeze. Then, a loud, resounding slap echoed through the hall. Elias's mother had marched forward without hesitation and struck him across the face. "Elias, how dare you disgrace your uncle's wedding? Get out, now. Kneel outside until you learn some respect." The force of the slap shattered whatever arrogance he had left. Elias staggered back, his vision swimming, his thoughts muddled. Before he could process what had happened, the guards grabbed him, dragging him out of the hall, forced onto his knees on the cold stone steps. He sat in silence, his hands limp at his sides, his eyes vacant. His mind replayed the image of Angelica in her white wedding gown, walking gracefully down the aisle. So beautiful, so radiant, a light he had once taken for granted. And now, she was further away than ever. He had always hated arranged marriages, hated being controlled, hated losing his freedom. Now, Angelica was married to someone else. No one would control him anymore. He should be happy. He should be free. So why did his chest feel so empty? Elias kept telling himself it didn't matter, that he was fine. that he didn't care. He tried to smile, to force some semblance of indifference, but at some point, warm tears had already slid down the corner of his lips, bitter and cold, just like the tears Angelica had shed when she was hurt. Regret and heartbreak crashed over him like relentless waves, dragging him into an abyss he couldn't escape. Kneeling there, his hands clenched into fists, nails digging into his palms, but no amount of pain could ease the ache inside his chest. Samuel could only watch as Elias was dragged away. He knew better than to resist. If he fought back, he would end up just like Elias. So he remained where he stood, staring unblinkingly at the stage. His entire body trembled. His fingers curled into a tight fist, nails piercing into his skin, yet he didn't dare to make a sound. Now, let's proceed with the ring exchange. Angelica's hands trembled slightly as she carefully slipped the custom-made Angelica ring onto Leonardo's finger. This ring, every detail, every engraving, was crafted by her own hands, a piece of her heart. Leonardo lifted the second ring and gently cradled Angelica's hand. With utmost tenderness, he slid the ring onto her finger. "I designed this myself," he murmured, his voice deep and unwavering. "It's called a perfect match to your Angelica, the only pair in the world." His gaze softened, filled with warmth and unwavering devotion. Angelica met his eyes and, for the first time, felt at peace. Maybe, just maybe, she had bet on the right person this time. This marriage was no longer a shackle. With Leonardo by her side, the pain of her past life, the betrayals, the suffering, would never happen again. From the audience, a chant rose. "Kiss! Kiss!" Angelica's mind went blank. Her heartbeat pounded wildly in her chest. The noise around her faded into silence. All she could hear was the sound of her own shallow breaths, and Leonardo's. They were close, too close. She could see the shadow cast by his long lashes, the way they fluttered slightly. A warm flush crept across her cheeks. She lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes. Then, Leonardo leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. His voice was low, reassuring. "Don't be afraid, Angie." They stood so close that they could hear each other's uneven breathing. Leonardo slowly lowered his head, his gaze locked onto Angelica's. A flicker of shyness flashed in his deep eyes. Angelica's cheeks were tinged with a soft pink. Her lips trembled slightly, and, almost instinctively, she let her eyes flutter shut. Time seemed to freeze. Everything around them blurred into the background. Only they existed. Then, a fleeting touch. Leonardo's lips brushed against hers, gentle and brief, like a whisper carried by the wind. A soft gasp rippled through the audience. Somewhere among the guests, a sharp shattering sound broke the silence. Samuel's grip on his glass had tightened until it finally gave way beneath his fingers. Cracks spiderwebbed across the glass before it shattered entirely, jagged shards slicing into his palm. Bright red blood seeped from the wounds, dripping onto his fingers, but he didn't even flinch. His red-rimmed eyes remained fixed on the stage, burning with something raw and unreadable. Pain, regret, rage. Yet, no one noticed him. No one cared. Just as no one had cared when Angelica had once screamed for help. Trapped in that car, she had called out, begged. Yet no one had listened. No one had saved her. By the time the wedding had ended and the guests had all dispersed, the night had grown deep. Only then did Elias and Samuel's mothers arrive, fashionably late, their expressions clouded with disappointment and cold fury. The moment they stepped into the hall, their sharp gazes swept over their sons. Then, "Take them to the lounge." At their command, the guard swiftly grabbed Elias and Samuel and dragged them away. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing out the lingering sounds of celebration. Inside the room, silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Then, a scoff. Elias's mother crossed her arms, her voice carrying an unshakable authority. "Kneel." Outside, they were feared, wild, untouchable, untamed. But here, under the weight of their mother's gazes, they didn't dare disobey. With clenched fists and gritted teeth, they sank to their knees. They didn't even lift their heads. Samuel's mother watched them with cold disdain. "You two grew up with Angelica when her father died. The wealth he left behind was meant to protect her. A marriage alliance with her was nothing but beneficial, so tell me, What the hell were you two thinking? Her voice, sharp with restrained anger, cut through the air. Then, a sudden, brutal strike. The wooden cane in her hand came down mercilessly, landing with a dull, heavy sound against their kneecaps. Neither of them flinched. Neither of them dared to make a sound. But the pain sank deep into their bones. It was one thing for you to refuse the marriage alliance, but to side with an adopted daughter and bully Angelica? We left her in your care while we were abroad. And this is how you repaid that trust. Do you really think you can do whatever you want? You've been kneeling here for a while now. Tell me, what exactly did you do wrong? Silence stretched between them, until, finally, Elias couldn't hold back any longer. Mom, Aunt, I never wanted to marry her. Angelica doesn't understand me, only Rebecca does. If Angelica treated Rebecca badly, then she deserved to suffer a little. Samuel quickly chimed in. If she hadn't been clinging to us like a shadow, always trying to control us, we wouldn't have been so annoyed by her. Hearing this, Samuel's mother let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Oh, so neither of you wanted the marriage alliance? Fine. Then Angelica has married your uncle now. Shouldn't you both be relieved? Why? Then, did you cause a scene at the wedding today? The room fell into a heavy silence. Elias and Samuel had no answer. Seeing their reaction, Elias's mother's voice turned even colder. Didn't you both just say that only Rebecca understands you? Then I'll make sure you both marry Rebecca. Both men froze. Then, almost in unison, they shook their heads in frantic denial. We don't want to marry Rebecca. Their mother's eyes darkened with finality. It's not up to you anymore, right now. Neither of you have a say in the ours family alliances. Kneel here and reflect. You can come out when you finally understand your mistakes. With that, Elias's and Samuel's mothers turned and left, shutting the door behind them. The two young men remained kneeling in the empty, silent room. Neither of them spoke. The only sound was their quiet, steady breathing. After a long while, Elias finally broke the silence, his voice uncertain. Angelica really married Uncle Leo? Samuel fell silent. As much as he didn't want to admit it, the truth was right in front of him. Angelica had really married their uncle. Yeah, and they even kissed just now. It doesn't look fake. Another heavy silence fell over them. But inside, waves of emotions crashed violently. Had Angelica truly let them go? Elias and Samuel desperately searched for excuses to comfort themselves. Maybe it was just a staged act. Maybe Uncle Leo was just playing along. But deep down, they both knew Leonardo wasn't the type to entertain childish games. If he had married Angelica, it wasn't for show. Had they really pushed her too far? Had their actions made her give up on them entirely? Doubt and regret gnawed at them. They needed to see Angelica, to ask her, to hear it from her directly. They exchanged a glance, a silent agreement. They would find a way to leave. But before they could even move, the door swung open. Leonardo stepped inside. His cold, piercing gaze swept over them, carrying an air of absolute dominance. Going somewhere? Who are you planning to see? Elias and Samuel froze. The courage they had just mustered instantly crumbled. Their heads instinctively lowered, unable to meet Leonardo's icy stare. Neither of you are leaving until I say so. You think you can just walk away after everything you did to Angelica? Get ready, because you'll be paying for it 100 times over. Leonardo's voice was calm, but it carried an unmistakable weight of warning. Then, his gaze darkened further. And one more thing, Angelica is my lawfully wedded wife. You'd better remember your place. Next time you see her, address her properly, as your aunt. And don't even think about having any lingering thoughts about her. Leonardo turned to leave. Just as he reached the doorway, he paused, throwing out one final remark. Rebecca will be marrying one of you. Think carefully about who it'll be. Then, he walked out, leaving behind two men with ashen faces. Elias and Samuel could barely breathe. The weight of that last sentence sent an overwhelming chill down their spines. The mere thought of marrying Rebecca, neither of them could accept it. By the time they were finally allowed to stand, the night had already deepened. Exhausted from kneeling for hours, their legs were numb. They could barely move. relying on each other for support as they staggered out of the room. The remnants of the wedding still lingered in the air. The venue had yet to be fully cleaned up. The scent of flowers and champagne still faintly lingered. But what truly caught their attention was the wedding portrait displayed in the center. Leonardo stood tall in the photo, tilting his head down as he gently kissed Angelica. Angelica, dressed in white, was smiling, a soft, shy, genuine smile, the kind she had never shown them. Like a blade, that image cut straight into their hearts. A hollow ache spread through Elias's chest, suffocating him. His breathing grew uneven, as if something invisible was crushing his lungs. Beside him, Samuel's face had lost all color. His eyes, usually sharp and full of arrogance, now stared blankly at the picture, as if he refused to believe it was real. She really doesn't want us anymore. Elias's voice was barely above a whisper, hoarse and strained. It was as if something was lodged in his throat, making it nearly impossible to speak. Samuel didn't respond. He simply lowered his head, hiding the pain in his eyes. Then, suddenly, Elias's expression changed. Panic flickered across his face. He turned to Samuel in desperation. Let's go to our house, the one we shared with Angie." Samuel's eyes widened slightly, then he nodded. They exchanged a glance, and immediately got into the car. The entire drive was silent. The air inside was thick, suffocating. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them could. When they arrived, the familiar sight of the house greeted them. The moment they stepped inside, the scent, the feeling of the place hit them all at once. It was still the house they knew, but something was missing. Something was wrong. Elias scanned the room, his chest tightening. There was nothing. No trace of Angelica. No clothes in the closet. No personal belongings. No lingering signs that she had ever lived here. It was as if she had never existed in their lives at all. A crushing sense of loss swallowed him whole. His legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the couch. His eyes were hollow as he muttered, "She really left us." Samuel suddenly snapped out of his daze. A frantic urgency overtook him. He dashed toward the trash bin. His fingers trembled as he rummaged through it. He had to find something, anything, left behind. And then, his hand froze. There, among the discarded trash, was a small, folded piece of paper. Not just any paper. A tiny origami star. Samuel carefully unfolded each origami star, his hands trembling as he smoothed out the delicate paper. The ink was slightly smudged, but the words were still legible. "The first time I fought with Elias and Samuel because of Rebecca. It was my lipstick, but Elias insisted I give it to Rebecca. He even said I was being immature." The seventh argument. Ever since my father's inheritance was revealed, Elias and Samuel have been treating me worse and worse. But I don't know what I did wrong. The 100th argument. I don't know when I'll finally give up. I'm so tired. When this jar is full, I'll leave. Each word felt like a dagger plunging into Samuel's heart. His fingers clenched around the fragile paper, his breathing uneven. He looked up at Elias, his eyes filled with pain and regret. "What have we done?" Elias walked over, taking one of the notes from Samuel's shaking hands. His gaze traced the familiar handwriting, and his chest tightened. These stars, once filled with Angelica's hopes, had become the remnants of their cruelty, and they had crushed them all. Silence hung between them, heavy and suffocating. Regret gnawed at their souls. How were they supposed to make up for this? How were they supposed to fix what they had destroyed? Then, the door creaked open. A familiar floral scent drifted in. Angie. Both men turned toward the door, their eyes flashing with desperate hope. But it wasn't her. It was Rebecca. The moment she saw their expressions, the smile on her face stiffened. Her fingers curled tightly around the fabric of her dress, an anxious glint flashing in her eyes. "Elias. Samuel. What did you just say?" "I didn't hear clearly." Her voice was soft, cautious. She set her handbag down on the table and slowly stepped toward them. "I heard you both were punished to kneel for a day and a night. I tried calling you, but you didn't answer. So I came here to find you." She approached them with a gentle expression. "You must be exhausted after kneeling for so long. You probably haven't eaten yet." right? Let me cook something for you." As she spoke, she reached out, trying to touch Elias's arm, but Elias instinctively stepped back, his face cold, his voice distant. "Don't touch me, I'm not hungry." Rebecca's hand froze in midair. She quickly composed herself, pretending not to notice his rejection. She turned to Samuel, her eyes filled with expectation. "Samuel, what about you? Do you want to eat something?" "No need, we just need some rest. You should leave." Samuel's tone was just as indifferent. He didn't even look up, his head lowered in exhaustion and irritation. Rebecca's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She bit her lip, trying to hold them back. "Did I do something wrong? Why are you both suddenly treating me so coldly? Is it because of the arranged marriage? I know you both want your freedom, but I have no control over this either. I promise, I won't interfere in your lives at all. Can't you at least try to accept me?" Under normal circumstances, if she had shown even a hint of distress, Elias and Samuel would have immediately softened. They would have comforted her. They would have protected her. But now, their hearts were filled with nothing but restlessness and disgust. Because now, they finally understood. It had never been Rebecca. It had always been Angelica. From the very beginning, when they were kids, they never let other boys get close to Angelica. Like knights, they guarded her, standing by her side, always there, always present. As they grew older, every single guy who had tried to approach her had been driven away by them. Back then, they never realized that was love, that was possession, that was obsession. Elias lifted his head, his gaze sharp and unyielding. His voice was absolute. "We will never marry you. You better give up now. We used to think you were different, that you understood us better than anyone. But now we know. The only one we ever cared about was Angie. Even if we die, we will never agree to marry you." Samuel also nodded, his voice just as cold. "If you're looking for a marriage alliance, we can introduce you to some decent heirs from other families, but it won't be us. There's no possibility between you and us." Rebecca stood frozen, unable to believe what she was hearing. This isn't how it was supposed to be. Elias and Samuel had always treated Angelica coldly. Rebecca had once foolishly believed that maybe, just maybe, they liked her instead. She had spent years carefully catering to them, doing everything she could to win their favor, to take Angelica's place in their hearts. And yet, everything had changed. Now, the very same words they had once said to Angelica, they were throwing at her instead. Rebecca's carefully maintained facade nearly cracked. Her voice took on a venomous edge. "Angelica is married now. You two have no chance with her anymore." The air in the room instantly chilled. Elias and Samuel's expressions darkened. Samuel's voice was laced with quiet fury. "Impossible. We've known Angie for years. There's no way she'd just throw us away like that." Samuel's gaze turned ice cold as he looked at Rebecca. "Rebecca, shut your mouth. Our relationship with Angelica has nothing to do with you." He didn't soften his tone. He didn't try to comfort her. For the first time, he saw Rebecca for what she was. Elias had lost patience entirely. He took out his phone and sent a simple text. Within moments, several security guards arrived, their expressions blank and professional. They walked up to Rebecca and grabbed her firmly by the arm. "Miss, please leave." Rebecca struggled as she was dragged away. Her eyes darted back toward Elias and Samuel, desperation flickering in them. She had worked so hard to climb to this position. She wouldn't let go of them so easily. As she was forced out, she clenched her fists. "Elias, Samuel, I will come back to you." Inside the room, an eerie silence settled. Neither man spoke. The air felt suffocating. Days passed. They texted Angelica countless times, but there was no reply, not even a single word. Samuel sat there, staring blankly at the chat window, a deep, irrevocable regret carved into his chest. The last conversation they had with Angelica was when she was gravely injured, and they still made her buy food for Rebecca. Back then, they hadn't even bothered to ask if she was okay. They had seen her break the car window, and instead of worrying, they thought she was throwing another tantrum. They hadn't realized just how badly she had been hurt. Samuel scrolled through Rebecca's past messages, Messages filled with fake concern, manipulative words. One by one, it was then that he truly understood what it felt like to betray someone who loved you. Elias, too, was desperate. He called Angelica again and again. No one answered. Then, she blocked him. Samuel tried as well. The same result. Frustrated, they used their housekeeper's phone. This time, the call finally connected. Neither of them spoke. Their hearts pounded in their chests, sweat forming in their palms. They gestured for the housekeeper to speak. "Hello, is this Miss Angelica? Elias and Samuel have been in a car accident. They're seriously injured. Can you come see them?" The silence on the other end stretched. For a moment, it seemed as though Angelica might actually care. But then, a deep, masculine voice responded. "Elias. Samuel, if you're sick, then focus on getting treatment. But don't bother your aunt again." Click. The call wasn't cut off immediately. Instead, they heard shuffling noises, the sound of Angelica searching for something. Then, her soft, sleepy voice, filled with dependence. "Dear, who was that? So annoying. Just come back to bed." Elias and Samuel felt their blood run cold. Leonardo's voice followed, low, possessive, indulgent. "Honey, all right. It was my fault. Let's sleep now." A rustling sound. Then, silence. The call had ended. But for Elias and Samuel, it was the end of their world. The housekeeper hesitated before handing the phone back to Elias and Samuel, fear flickering in her eyes. Elias snatched the phone, staring at the call log. The call had ended. With a furious roar, he smashed the phone onto the ground. Crack. The screen shattered. But his heart felt even more broken than that glass. Samuel's eyes were bloodshot. His fists clenched so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, drawing blood. Yet, he felt nothing. That night, they drowned themselves in alcohol, desperately trying to numb the pain clawing at their insides. Bottle after bottle, they drank until their faces flushed red. Yet, they did not stop. The burn of the liquor seeped down their throats, but it could not wash away the regret carving through their souls. It only made it clearer. They had lost her. The next morning, whether it was liquid courage or the last remnants of their stubborn denial, Elias and Samuel got into a car and headed straight for Leonardo's house. The sharp, persistent knocks shattered the morning peace of the Koo family estate. A servant hesitantly opened the door, her face full of unease, seeing Elias and Samuel drunkenly swaying at the entrance. She didn't dare refuse them outright. She quickly had the other servants help them inside, and then rushed upstairs to inform Leonardo. Elias and Samuel stumbled into the grand living room, but the moment their hazy eyes landed on the wedding photos, their last shred of reason snapped. Ignoring the servants' protests, they charged toward the stairs, determined to find Angelica and demand answers. Upstairs, Leonardo had just stirred from his sleep. He was about to get up, but before he could, Angelica was already awake. Her delicate brows furrowed as she listened to the noise below. "Elias, Samuel." She let out a cold breath. They never stopped. Her patience had long since run dry. She sat up, swiftly fixing her hair, then followed Leonardo downstairs, carrying 2 glasses of ice-cold water. When she reached them, she didn't hesitate. With sharp, decisive movements, she splashed the 2 glasses of ice water directly onto their heads. Splash. Cold liquid drenched them, soaking their clothes and dripping down their hair. Humiliation burned in their veins. It was the exact same thing they had done to her once. Only now, they were the ones left shivering in the cold. Elias and Samuel froze, their alcohol-clouded minds clearing just enough to register what had happened. They lifted their heads, only to be met with Angelica's mocking smirk. "Remember when you did this to me?" Her tone was light, but her eyes were filled with icy contempt. "Cold, isn't it?" The humiliation settled deep in their bones. Elias swallowed, his throat dry. Samuel clenched his fists, nails biting into his damp palms. It was then that they remembered. Leonardo was watching them. His dark eyes bore into them like a silent executioner. They shuddered. Elias swallowed hard and tried to salvage the situation. "Uncle," Leonardo chuckled coldly. "And?" The weight of expectation hung in the air. Elias's face twisted, but under Leonardo's piercing gaze, he had no choice. "Aunt." The word tasted like ashes in his mouth. Leonardo leaned back, his voice laced with undisguised impatience. "Elias. Samuel, I warned you once. Apparently, it wasn't enough." He tilted his head, eyes gleaming with dangerous amusement. "Africa has some upcoming projects. You two are going. For major families, don't keep useless brats around." Silence. The servants didn't dare breathe. Elias and Samuel's faces turned ashen. This was no punishment. This was exile. Leonardo was cutting them off. And they knew, in the business world, if Leonardo wanted them buried, they would never recover. Angelica, meanwhile, watched calmly. She had heard stories of Leonardo's ruthlessness, but she had only ever known his gentleness. Now, he was shielding her, and it gave her the strength to do what she had never dared to do before. To end this, Elias. Samuel. Her voice was steady. She did not flinch under their stares. "I'm saying this once, so listen carefully. In the past, I tolerated you because I needed you, but that never meant you had the right to trample on my dignity. You humiliated me, hurt me, repeatedly, and I let it slide because I thought fighting back would only make things worse." She let out a bitter laugh. "But everything has changed. I am now married to Leonardo. I am your aunt. Our relationship has changed. Our roles have changed. If you still can't understand that, then let me make it clearer." Her gaze sharpened. "I don't need you anymore. Respect me as your aunt, or get out of my sight." Angelica paused, her gaze filled with disdain. "As for you two and Rebecca, I couldn't care less. Do whatever you want. Ruin your own lives if you must. Just don't appear in front of me again. I don't want to see any of you. I've said my piece. From now on, we go our separate ways." Elias and Samuel opened their mouths, wanting to argue, but when their eyes met Leonardo's icy, merciless gaze, all their courage crumbled to dust. Leonardo's face remained impassive. Then, in a tone so cold it could freeze hell itself, he uttered two simple words. "Get out." Elias and Samuel stiffened, just as they were about to leave in shame. A hesitant voice interrupted. Senora. Rebecca is here." "Rebecca?" Everyone in the room was equally confused. "Let her in." Angelica smirked, arms crossed. She was curious to see what little act Rebecca had prepared this time. After all, they still had unfinished business. Rebecca walked in with her usual docile expression, but the moment she saw Elias and Samuel kneeling on the floor, her eyes widened in panic. "Elias! Samuel! What happened to you?" She rushed toward them, desperation in her voice, but neither of them even looked at her. They sat there motionless, as if she didn't exist. Rebecca's expression faltered. She turned to Angelica. "Sister, no." "Angelica, I know you have grievances against me, but if you have any anger, take it out on me. Don't bully Elias and Samuel." Angelica let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Her eyes glinted with disdain. And then, smack! A hard slap landed on Rebecca's face. "That was for my father." Rebecca staggered back, covering her burning cheek, her eyes filling with tears. Angelica's voice was filled with rage and disgust. "He took you out of poverty, gave you everything, paid for your education. He asked for nothing in return, except that you look after me. And how did you repay him? By repeatedly betraying me, tormenting me, plotting against me." Smack! Another slap. "And this one is for the past me. The one who was foolish enough to treat you as family. The one who even wanted to share her inheritance with you. You never wanted to be my sister. You wanted me dead." Rebecca collapsed onto the floor, her voice trembling. "Angelica. I didn't." "You must be misunderstanding something." Angelica scoffed, her lips curling into a sneer. "Still pretending? Then take a look at this." She threw a stack of photos onto Rebecca's face. The pictures fluttered to the ground, exposing every single thing Rebecca had done. Rebecca's face drained of color. "You wanted Elias to invite me on a hot air balloon ride on my 20th birthday, didn't you?" Elias's breath hitched. His eyes flickered with shock. "Wait. Rebecca did mention that before." But I was mad at you, so I never followed up. Rebecca started shaking, desperate to deny it. And no, that's not true. I wouldn't. Angelica's voice turned sharp, trembling with fury. You tampered with the hot air balloon. You sabotaged the parachute. Rebecca, you wanted me dead. Her voice cracked as the memories came rushing back. That terrifying moment when she realized she was plummeting toward the cliffs. The overwhelming helplessness. The absolute certainty of death. Angelica clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. You wanted my inheritance so badly that you were willing to kill me for it. You are worse than a snake. Rebecca froze, unable to speak. Her mind spun wildly, but no excuse seemed convincing enough. Her lips trembled, her body shaking uncontrollably. Tears streamed down her face as she collapsed onto the floor, sobbing. And just then, a sharp, piercing police siren echoed through the air. The front doors swung open, and a group of uniformed officers strode in, their gazes sharp and unwavering. The police swiftly surrounded Rebecca, locking cold metal handcuffs around her wrists without hesitation. Miss Rebecca, you are under arrest for attempted murder. You need to come with us to the station. The sharp clink of the cuffs echoed through the silent room, making the atmosphere even heavier. Rebecca's face turned deathly pale, her eyes filled with shock and terror. She struggled, but the officers held her down firmly. Leonardo stood at the side, his gaze as sharp as a blade. Rebecca, I'll make sure the best lawyers handle your case. You will pay for everything you've done. Rebecca was dragged toward the exit, kicking and screaming. She turned her head desperately, her expression full of unwillingness and despair. She shouted, trying one last time to defend herself. This is unfair. I was framed. But her voice was drowned out by the blaring siren. The police shoved her into the car, the flashing red and blue lights reflecting in her panicked eyes. The vehicle sped away, disappearing down the street, as the sound of the sirens faded into the distance. Angelica finally let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. It was over, the weight on her chest, the fear, the nightmares, gone. Leonardo walked over, his hand gently enveloping hers, his eyes filled with warmth. Angie, it's over. You don't have to be afraid anymore. His voice was deep, calm, like a solid rock anchoring her in the storm. Angelica looked up at him, her heart finally at ease. Leonardo was her safe haven. A faint smile appeared on her lips. Thank you, Leo. At the side, Elias and Samuel watched in silence. They had no sympathy for Rebecca. If anything, they felt relieved, at least now. They didn't have to marry her. But when their gazes shifted to Angelica's cold expression, a sense of unease crept up their spines. They had done too many things to hurt her. Would she ever forgive them? Elias was the first to break the silence. Angelica, we're sorry. We didn't know Rebecca's true nature. We never meant to hurt you. Samuel quickly added, yeah, can we do anything to make it up to you? Whatever you want. We'll do it. Angelica looked at them blankly, her eyes devoid of emotion. Her voice was calm, but distant. It's fine, we're family now. Her tone was sharp, and she emphasized the words family with a cold smile. Elias and Samuel's faces turned white. Leonardo spoke without mercy. Your little aunt may be kind enough to let the past go, but I am not. His voice dropped, filled with authority. 1 week from now, both of you will pack your bags. You're going to Africa. Elias and Samuel's mouths opened, but no words came out. They knew there was no point in arguing. If Leonardo made a decision, no one, not even their mothers, could change it. Their heads hung low as they turned and left the room. Angelica watched their backs disappear, feeling an unexpected sense of peace. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe. She turned to Leonardo, her fingers tightening around his. Leo, will you always be my safe place? Leonardo didn't hesitate. Of course, I'll always be here. With unwavering certainty, he pulled her into his embrace. You're not alone anymore, Angie. As long as you need me, I'll always be by your side. For the first time, Angelica felt like she could finally let go of the past. Maybe this time, she could open her heart and truly love someone. 3 days later, Angelica and Leonardo visited her parents' graves together. On Angelica's 16th birthday, her parents had planned to return home to celebrate with her. But tragedy struck. On the way back, they got into a car accident and never made it to the hospital. They passed away on the spot. Since that day, Angelica had never celebrated another birthday because every birthday was just a reminder of what she had lost. Last year, when she walked downstairs, she saw the entire house decorated for a birthday celebration. Her heart sank instantly. Rebecca stood in front of her, holding a birthday cake, a fake, gentle smile on her face. "Sister, happy birthday." Angelica's voice was cold. "I don't celebrate birthdays." To her, this day was her parents' death anniversary, not a day of joy. But Rebecca suddenly burst into tears, as if Angelica had bullied her. "Sister, do you hate me? Is that why you said that?" Angelica didn't want to waste another word on her. She turned to leave, but Elias blocked the door, his face full of anger. "Angelica, what's your problem? Why are you always against Rebecca for no reason?" Samuel was even colder, his voice filled with impatience. "Angelica, why do you never appreciate what Rebecca does for you? Go apologize to her." Their accusations felt like knives, slicing through Angelica's last bit of restraint. At that moment, she had never felt more alone. Nothing she said would ever matter to them. She tried to walk away, but Samuel grabbed her wrist tightly, his tone full of irritation. "Angelica, aren't you tired of acting out every day?" His shameless words made Angelica feel utter disgust. She couldn't take it anymore. Smack! She slapped Samuel hard across the face. "Today is my parents' death anniversary. How do you expect me to celebrate?" Her voice was trembling. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. "I hate all of you." Then she broke free from Samuel's grip and ran outside. Behind her, Elias shouted angrily, "Angelica, if you walk out that door today, don't regret it." She didn't remember how they made up afterward, but she could never forget the pain. That day became a scar in her heart that would never heal. "Angie, let's go." Leonardo's gentle voice pulled her out of her thoughts. His presence was like a warm light, chasing away the darkness inside her. She tightened her grip on his hand, her expression softening. "Okay, let's go see Mom and Dad." She wasn't alone anymore. Now, she had someone to rely on, someone to listen to her, someone to protect her. She knew that if her parents could see her now, they would be at peace, knowing she was finally happy. "Mom, Dad, I hope you're happy for me too." She talked to them for a long time, sharing everything on her mind. Leonardo gave her space, allowing her a private moment with her parents. From a distance, he stood at the entrance, watching over her protectively, his gaze filled with warmth. But not long after Leonardo left, two familiar figures appeared at the cemetery entrance, holding white chrysanthemums in their hands. It was Elias and Samuel. The moment Angelica saw them, her expression darkened. Her tone was unwelcoming. "What are you doing here?" Elias's eyes lit up with excitement when he saw Angelica. He quickened his pace toward her. "Angie, we came to visit Uncle last year. We weren't here with you. That was our mistake." There was guilt in Elias's eyes, as if he were trying to make up for past mistakes. But Angelica's voice remained calm, as if she were speaking about something irrelevant to her own life. "It's all in the past." She had long stopped being the girl who was easily moved. The pain she had suffered taught her how to protect herself. Yet, upon hearing her words, Elias suddenly panicked. He grabbed Angelica's hand tightly, hope flashing in his eyes. "No, it's not in the past. We still have a future. Angie, I know you don't love Uncle Leonardo. You only married him because of your father's will. Let's start over." Elias's voice was filled with urgency and desperation, as if he was grasping at his last chance. Samuel quickly chimed in. "Angie, we know we were wrong. We've been together for so many years. Do you really want to leave us behind?" As Angelica looked into their eyes, memories of the darkest days of her life resurfaced. The days after her parents' accident. Her relatives fought over her father's inheritance, arguing so fiercely that their faces turned red. But no one cared about her. It was as if the whole world had abandoned her. Back then, when she had just come of age, only Elias and Samuel had stood by her side. Elias had held her hand firmly, his eyes filled with warmth. Angie, don't be afraid. You have family. We bought a house. We'll live together. We'll always be together. Yes. Forever. At that moment, it had felt like the world had stopped, and the only thing she could hear was the frantic beating of her heart. But over time, the promises they made faded, worn down by reality, until they disappeared completely. Elias saw her hesitation and held her hand even tighter. Pain shot through her fingers, pulling her back to reality. Her gaze fell onto the scar on her hand, and she was reminded of one heartbreaking moment from the past. The first time she had tried to cook for them, she had clumsily cut vegetables and seasoned the food, nervous yet excited, hoping to give them a surprise. But when she joyfully brought the food to the table, she was met with a storm of disappointment. Elias and Samuel had been in a bad mood because of Rebecca. When they saw the food Angelica had prepared, their faces were filled with impatience. Elias frowned, his voice filled with disgust. "What is this? How did you even cook it like this?" Samuel was even crueler. He pushed the plate off the table, causing the food to spill all over the floor. Angelica froze, shocked and hurt. She stared at the broken plate and scattered food, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. But she refused to cry. As she bent down to pick up the mess, her hand accidentally touched the hot pan, leaving behind a deep burn scar. The pain had spread through her entire body, but her heart hurt even more. Some things, once broken, could never be repaired. She gently pulled her hand away from Elias's grip, her heart completely calm. The pain and disappointment from the past had turned into indifference. She looked up at them, her gaze filled with resolution. "There is no future between us. I am married to your uncle now, and we are very happy together." Her voice was calm, yet unwavering. At some point, the sky had started to drizzle, the fine raindrops falling lightly on the ground. From a distance, Leonardo rushed over, quickly opening an umbrella over Angelica's head. Under the umbrella, the world felt like a private space, where only the two of them existed. Leonardo spoke in a soft, indulgent voice. "Angie, don't stand in the rain." Angelica smiled faintly and looked at Elias and Samuel. There was no longer any emotion in her gaze. "Just like the rain, the past will pass, but the scars it leaves behind will never fade." Her voice was calm yet distant, severing all ties between them. "It's all over. Aren't you leaving for Africa soon?" Samuel's eyes were red, filled with confusion and desperation, as if this was the last excuse he could cling to. "Why? Is it because of Rebecca? I've already deleted all her contacts. We will make sure she pays for everything she did," Samuel hurriedly explained, trying to find a way to salvage the situation. "Angie, please give us one last chance." Angelica looked at them, so lost in their own delusions, and sighed softly. "Some things, once broken, can never be put back together. A shattered mirror can never be whole again. We are no longer who we used to be." Elias and Samuel reacted as if they had just heard the most ridiculous joke. "But we've never changed." Elias's voice was filled with reluctance. "Angie, you once promised that we'd never be apart." Angelica let out a mocking smile. "Oh, really? Wasn't it you who once told me we'd always be together? From beginning to end, the ones who changed were you too." Her words hit them like a hammer, making them speechless. Elias reached out, trying to pull her into his embrace, as if hoping this hug could undo all the pain he had caused. But before he could touch her, Leonardo reacted swiftly, kicking him away. His voice was cold and sharp. "Don't touch her." For a long time after that, Elias and Samuel seemed to have completely vanished from Angelica's life. Before they were sent to Africa, perhaps still holding on to a sliver of hope, they mustered the courage to go to Leonardo's home, hoping to see Angelica one last time. They carried a small expectation, wishing for her forgiveness, or at least a proper goodbye. However, Leonardo did not give them that chance. He stood at the entrance, his face icy cold, his presence unshakable. "You are no longer qualified to see her. Angie is now your aunt, and she is happy. She doesn't need your interference." His words were like cold rain, extinguishing the last ember of hope in their hearts. Elias and Samuel stood frozen at the door, their faces filled with resentment and despair. They tried to explain, but Leonardo did not give them any opportunity. In the end, they had no choice but to leave in disappointment. The environment at the African branch was truly harsh, excruciatingly high temperatures, intense workloads, and extremely basic living conditions. At first, Elias and Samuel resented the arrangement, complaining constantly, even attempting to escape. But soon, they realized Leonardo's decisions were absolute. There was no escaping reality. If they wanted to survive, they had to adapt. Over the next several months, Elias and Samuel faced challenge after challenge. They worked under the scorching sun, struggled with cultural differences, and fought against their own egos as they were forced to work with people from all walks of life. Every failure, every setback, was like a hammer striking their pride, forcing them to reflect on who they had become. Elias, once arrogant and careless, suffered humiliation in an important business report meeting. Unprepared and reckless, he was harshly criticized by his superiors, standing there in front of everyone, utterly humiliated. For the first time, he realized his own incompetence, that he had spent years indulging in arrogance without ever truly proving himself. From that day on, he changed. He started taking every task seriously, working harder than he ever had, no longer treating everything like a joke. Samuel, on the other hand, learned the consequences of selfishness. During a critical project, his impatience and inability to collaborate led to the entire team failing. For the first time in his life, he watched the disappointment in his colleagues' eyes, and he finally understood how many people he had let down. He started to listen more, observe more, and work as part of a team, instead of just thinking about himself. As time passed, Elias and Samuel realized something deeper. They reflected on the way they had treated Angelica. For the first time, they acknowledged what they had done to her was unforgivable. True growth was not just improving their skills, it was about changing their hearts. During one sleepless night filled with self-reflection, Elias wrote a letter to Angelica. Angie, I know I have no right to call you that anymore, but I want to tell you that during my time in Africa, I've truly learned a lot. I finally understand your pain, and I've started to reflect on my own actions. I only hope to receive your forgiveness, even if it's just a small piece of it, deep in your heart. Similarly, in his personal journal, Samuel wrote, I finally understand that true friendship and love are not meant to cause harm. My past actions were wrong. I hurt the one person I should have protected the most. I only hope that one day, I will be able to make amends and regain her trust. After months of hardship, Elias and Samuel gradually matured. They became more responsible, more disciplined, and worked hard to improve themselves. Even if Angelica never took them back, they wanted to at least become people she could respect, even if it meant only being her friend from a distance. 1 year later, they returned. By then, Angelica and Leonardo's marriage had flourished. Their life together was filled with love, laughter, and a deep sense of companionship. One day, while organizing Leonardo's study, Angelica accidentally discovered a hidden room. The room was carefully concealed behind a bookshelf, something she wouldn't have noticed if she hadn't pushed the wrong book by accident. As the hidden passage slowly opened, Angelica froze in shock. Inside the secret room, there were countless gifts, all neatly wrapped, each with a small handwritten card bearing her name. Angelica's heart pounded rapidly. Overwhelmed by a flood of emotions, she stepped inside and carefully examined each gift. There were books she had once mentioned wanting to read, exquisite jewelry, handmade photo frames, and even small trinkets she had casually talked about but never received. Each gift was a reflection of Leonardo's quiet devotion. Every card carried words of love and warmth. She picked up a beautifully crafted picture frame. Inside was a photo of her and Leonardo. The card attached to it read, Angie, I hope you smile every day. Her eyes welled up with tears, her heart brimming with emotion. Then she found a small handcrafted box. Inside, there was a hairpin she had dropped long ago. The card read, Angie, I found this the day you dropped it. I've always wanted to return it to you. A warmth spread through her chest. She finally realized Leonardo's love for her had always been deeper than she ever imagined. Holding the box close to her heart, she sought out Leonardo. She didn't question him immediately. Instead, she asked gently, Leo, I found the hidden room. Those gifts. Leonardo's face turned slightly red, a bit embarrassed. He chuckled and said, Angie, those were gifts I always wanted to give you but never found the right moment to. His eyes softened as he looked at her. When I was younger, I was rebellious. I used to get into fights. And one day, my father's enemies tried to kill me. If it weren't for you hiding nearby and secretly calling the police, I might not be standing here today. I kept buying gifts for you, but I was afraid you wouldn't like them or that they'd be a bother. So, I just kept them, waiting for a day when you might truly need them. The day you told me you wanted to marry me, I was the happiest man alive. Angelica's eyes shimmered with emotion, and she tightened her grip on Leonardo's hand. Leo, how could I not like them? Every single one of these gifts is incredibly precious to me. I never imagined you had done so much for me. Leonardo smiled, his fingers gently intertwining with hers. Angie, as long as you're happy, that's all that matters to me. These gifts are just a small way for me to show my love. I hope you can feel how much I truly care for you. Under Leonardo's guidance, Angelica began making a name for herself in the business world. Though he provided resources, he never controlled her decisions. Instead, he shared his experiences and discussed strategies with her, allowing her to grow independently. One day, Angelica negotiated a major business deal, using her sharp instincts and persuasive skills to secure a high-profile client. Leonardo stood behind her, quietly offering support. After sealing the deal, Angelica's reputation skyrocketed. Her colleagues and competitors began acknowledging her capabilities, praising her for being a force to be reckoned with. Leonardo watched from the sidelines, his heart swelling with pride. Angie, you've always been incredible. Now, the whole world sees it too. And for the first time in her life, Angelica felt truly free. She was no longer the girl who relied on others to survive. She had built her own strength, her own success, and her own happiness. With Leonardo by her side, she was unstoppable. True love is not just about sweet words. It's about supporting and understanding each other, building a life together, and creating precious memories side by side. 1 year later, Elias and Samuel returned from the African branch to a city. After enduring a year of hardship and growth, they were no longer the reckless young men they once were. Their first stop upon returning was Leonardo's home, not to beg for forgiveness, but to show Angelica how much they had changed. They stood at the doorstep, holding a bouquet of fresh flowers, their hearts filled with nervousness and anticipation. Leonardo opened the door and glanced at the flowers in their hands. After a brief pause, he gave a small nod, signaling them to enter. As Elias and Samuel stepped into the familiar living room, their gazes fell upon Angelica, sitting on the couch. For the first time in a long while, they felt a sense of unease. Angelica looked at them, her expression gentle and calm, not distant, not hostile, but warm. She gestured for them to sit down, breaking the awkward silence with a simple question. How has the past year been for you? Elias and Samuel exchanged a glance before nodding. It was tough, but we learned a lot. We've grown. Angelica smiled softly. I'm glad to hear that. Growth often comes from hardship, and the fact that you both made it through shows how strong you've become. Elias took a deep breath, gathering his courage. Angie, we truly regret our past mistakes. We hurt you and, in doing so, we also hurt ourselves. This past year, we've gone through a lot, and we've come to understand many things. We just hope that one day, even if it's just in a small way, you can find it in your heart to forgive us. Samuel nodded in agreement. Yes, we don't expect things to go back to how they used to be, but we do hope you'll give us a chance to prove that we've changed. We're not the same people anymore. Over the past year, Angelica's heart had softened, and the sharp edges of her pain had been smoothed by Leonardo's love. She thought for a moment before finally saying, I forgive you. The past is the past. Let's leave it behind. We are still family, and family should support and understand each other. Elias and Samuel exchanged a small, relieved smile. Some things, once lost, could never be regained, but that didn't mean they had to lose everything. At least, now, they could start anew. For Angelica, this day was no longer a day of sorrow, but a day filled with love and happiness. She woke up early, carefully preparing a special gift for Leonardo. When Leonardo finally opened his eyes, he found Angelica standing beside the bed, a tender smile on her face. He chuckled sleepily and pulled her into his embrace. "My little sleepyhead, why are you up so early?" Angelica giggled before presenting him with a small, elegant box. "Leo, today is our wedding anniversary. This is my gift to you." Leonardo opened the box carefully. Inside was a delicate, custom-made ring, engraved with their names. The metal gleamed softly under the morning light. Angelica's voice was gentle yet unwavering. "Leo, all these years, you've been my greatest support. Through this ring, I want to tell you that I will always stand by your side, through every tomorrow we walk together." Leonardo's eyes softened with emotion. He tightened his grip on her hand, warmth radiating from his touch. "Angie, thank you. I promise to spend the rest of my life protecting you, making you the happiest woman in the world." She smiled as she leaned into his embrace. "And I promise to protect you, too, to give you a lifetime of peace and love." In that moment, nothing else mattered. Their love was stronger than ever, and their future together was just beginning.